Catherine Diedrich joins us today to discuss medical need accommodations for students in public schools.
Plus all the news you can use and more today on The Undercurrent.
What's shaking, Uncle Warren?
Oh, you don't want to know. Only my proctologist knows that information. We got people here. What's up, Jabari?
CBC voter.
I'm just going to call you Jam Jab. Good to see you. Be sure to check out Jabari's channel. He's been doing some good work lately. I mean, not just lately, but in addition to what he's already been doing. So check out Jabari Media on YouTube there. Yeah, we got CBC voter in the house too. I'm sure we'll have some stragglers come in late as usual. Like in the old days when I used to go to the Southern Baptist Church, as the congregation would fall in, you always see those 3 or 4 cats around the corner smoking cigarettes. It's like that's some of our people. Like they'll be along shortly.
Yeah.
So it should be okay. We got a big show for you today.
We do have a really interesting guest. We got a mother of 2 kids with medical needs, and who they're teenagers now, but she's actually shepherded them through a Chicago public school system, and she knows a lot about public school accommodations for kids with medical needs and where where they will succeed in providing for those needs and where these schools fail.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely news you can use in today's world too, with all the uncertainties and whatnot. So let's see, anybody else pop in here?
John Kemper.
John, local guy. John, put mine out. Damn. You put yours out. No, don't put it out. Oh shit, what I do? Sorry. Well, we got news and stuff. That's a Chuck Barris thing. We got more stuff. Remember that from the Gong Show?
When you I was just thinking about the Gong Show the other day.
Yeah, Gene, the dancing machine, probably my favorite. Although everybody likes the unknown comic, Gene to me, because he was just so random. Every once, and Chuck Barris would just go nuts every time he come out. Like, Gene, the dancing machine, and Gene, and Chuck Barris is back there just having a good time. Those are the old days of game shows when people were like drinking. They were like
they were having fun. Well, if you remember, also I read excerpts of his autobiography, Chuck Barris, and I think he would claim he was a government agent, and
yeah, they made a whole movie about that. I think with
I think you're right.
Face. Oh God, who's the guy that played him? But it was a good movie. It was a good movie. Yeah. Wild times back in the 70s. Can you imagine if we were adults back in the 70s?
I think we would not be sitting here today.
I'd be a long time ago. I'd be in tracks. Yeah. We'd either not be here at all, or I'd be in traction just from all the hell raising. Like, I killed my body back in the 70s. Totally worth it. Totally worth it. All right, well, it's not really worth it, but we got news, and some of it's
yeah.
Well, it is what it is. Let me do a little thing here. Boop, and get them up there. Get our peeps, and okay, and away we go. So first item up for bids today. Survey: more Americans are carrying concealed guns. Gee, I wonder why.
Imagine that.
I mean, what a reversal of the way people have been before, but we'll talk more about it once we get through this. So firearm sales went through the roof during COVID and 2020 social unrest as people scrambled to deal with a world that seemed to be coming apart at the seams. Previously thought of with a great deal of exaggeration as the domain of white male rural dwellers, gun ownership became increasingly diverse as women and minorities acquired the means of self-defense. A recent survey finds that many people among the growing ranks of gun owners are carrying their tools for protection. In the survey, 13.2% carry all or most of the time, with another 16.6% carrying sometimes or rarely. The Crime Prevention Research Center, CPRC, announced last month as the results of a survey conducted by McLaughlin and Associates. The percent who carry all or most of the time is virtually the same as the percent who carried similarly in December 2024, but the percent who carry at least some of the time or rarely has increased by 5.4 percentage points, from 11.2% to 16.6%. So the total who are carrying increased by 5.5 percentage points, up to 29.8%. As you might expect, needing permission to carry a weapon in the form of a concealed carry permit reduces the rate at which residents of such states carry relative to those in constitutional carry states where no permits are required. But 25.98%, 26% of survey respondents at least occasionally carry guns in states that require permits, while 34.19% do so in constitutional carry states themselves. The matter of who is carrying firearms for self-protection is eye-opening, since the survey's answers blow away a lot of preconceptions. Asked how often do you carry a concealed handgun, 22.5% of Hispanics answered always or most of the time. For African Americans, the comparable number was 19.1%, and for white people, 11.5%. Asians and other were included in both this survey and the earlier 2024 survey, but their representation is so low, under 50 people each year, that I'm not sure how much can be drawn from the answers, though they report carrying less often than other groups. Since the 2024 survey, the percentage of Hispanics carrying at least rarely has increased to 39.4%. For African Americans, it's increased to 41.5%. For whites, it's gone from 22 to 27.5%. So up they go. To an extent, this squares with perceptions that cities have worse crime than suburbs and rural areas. I don't know if it's so much about the criminals, at least the traditional criminals, since African Americans and Hispanics tend to be more urban than non-Hispanic whites, though this is changing as the suburbs beckon to all. People in higher crime environments are more likely to carry the means of self-defense. In the 2026 survey, 18% of urban dwellers reported carrying a handgun all or most of the time, as compared to 11.7% of suburbanites and 9.6% of rural dwellers. But the increasing numbers of Americans who report carrying concealed handguns also corresponds with the growing ranks of gun owners in recent years and their changing makeup. The FBI reports that from 1998, so that was 28 years ago. Is that right? Yeah. 8 of the 10 highest days for NICS background checks were in 2020 or later, as were 9 of the top 10 weeks for background checks. Not every background check represents a gun purchase, but they track closely enough to indicate sales patterns. And the fact that is that Americans are even better armed now than they were before 2020. This goes on. Won't have the full story on our Substack, but you basically get the nuts and bolts as concealed carry has gone up. And as I quipped just a minute ago, I don't think it's just because of the traditional criminals, although that may be on the rise. There may be other factors where the government themselves are scaring the hell out of people. And what do you do when you get scared? Pew, pew, let's go get them.
Well, you remember what happened when ICE murdered Alex Preddy, and people who supported ICE were going, why is he carrying a gun? These are the same people who have no problem being strapped going into Target.
Yeah.
At this point, I think it's broken. There's very little trust at this point. A lot of women I know will carry because they don't trust the local constabulary to protect them against abusers and stalkers. And the gun is an equalizer when you have a huge difference in physical strength. I don't like this. I mean, I'm not happy about this situation, But I think that there is, I mean, they're concerned about, yeah, the other class of criminals that we now have on the street, but also just a complete lack of faith in any of the systems to protect them from people with bad intentions.
Yeah, and I was alluding to earlier how mindsets are changing. You know, back in the 90s with the plethora of school shootings and whatnot, there was this big push to limit guns, or at least get guns out of the hands of people who would do stuff like that. And now you fast forward to today, you're starting to see more and more people actually paying attention to what's going on in their own country and how crazy it's not only the government's acting, but the people around them are acting too. You know, it's like, I better strap up, or, you know, I may be a victim, you know, and that has like a cascading effect. You know, when one of your friends gets a gun, you're like, oh shit, maybe I should get one. And then they, you know, and then all of a sudden it's, you know, egoist. They told two friends and they told two friends and they told two friends. And that's how that happens, because when you're controlled by a government that uses fear to control you, what is the result? What do humans do? We respond by trying to protect ourselves. And what can protect ourselves? The old Annie Oakley tools there, you know, pew pew.
Yeah, pew, pew.
I don't like it either. I'm not a fan of guns. I don't own one myself, although I got two right here. Two tickets to the gun show.
Uncle Warren, when I get back to Chicago.
Yeah, unfortunately, there probably aren't muscle in there. But yeah, it's a fear thing. And you know, and people, I think some people who before would say no, who would have said, hell no, I'm not going to get a gun. That's not me. I don't want to contribute to a society like that, are now starting to think, well, maybe want to live. I do. Yeah, I would like to live. And it's getting pretty crazy out there. And I don't know if I'm built for that. So I better go get some sort of weapon.
And I'm going to take one step further with this. It may not be, I want to live. It may be, if I'm going to die, maybe I get to take somebody out, a bad person out in the process. Yeah. And that's, again, I don't think it's particularly healthy, but I understand the impulse at this point when when you have people who are questioning whether certain elements of what is supposed to be our own government are in fact an enemy.
Well, and you have to think too about how many people are turning to crime too, that weren't criminals before. You think about how much, as if you're a single person and you're doing crime, it's really, you know, you know better than that. But if you're somebody that has a family and you need to feed that family, and that food is too much and your boss ain't paying you enough, and well, you know, times get tough. I'm not saying that, obviously I'm not saying that they should go do that, but I'm just saying that does happen. People will get desperate enough for their families. And if they have to go get a gun in order to provide for their family, it's just a modern reality, and it's pretty scary.
It is.
Yeah. So, is it? Oh, okay, cool. All right. I thought I'd already read this. All right. So, in accordance to that, there's this story here. The court, SCOTUS blog, court sides with challenger to law banning drug users from possessing guns. They say drug users. I think they mean all drugs, but I think from what I read the other day, they were talking more about marijuana, but we'll get into it. Yeah. The Supreme Court ruled in United States versus Hamani that the federal government cannot prosecute a Texas man on charges that he violated a federal law barring users of illegal drugs from having a gun. It just says drugs there. In an opinion by Justice Neil Gorsuch, the justices agreed with Ali Daniel Hamani that at least when it is applied to him, the law violates the Second Amendment. Writing for the court, Gorsuch emphasized that the government was seeking to automatically strip Mr. Hamani of his Second Amendment right to possess a firearm and imprison him for up to 15 years based only on a showing that he regularly uses any amount of any controlled substance. But the government's arguments fell short, Gorsuch concluded, because the early American laws on which the government relied to support these restrictions targeted different kinds of people, did so for different reasons, and operated in different ways. The case began in 2022 when FBI agents searched Hamani's home and found a Glock 19 9mm pistol, 60 grams of marijuana, oh, you evil person, and 4.7 grams of cocaine. Okay, that's a little bit different. Just in case you don't know, folks, marijuana and cocaine, very, very different drugs. Hamani said that he used marijuana approximately every other day. How long did he use? How often did he use the cocaine? Based on his admission that he used marijuana, Hamani was indicted on charges that he had violated a federal law that makes it a crime for anyone who is an unlawful user or or addicted to any controlled substance to have a gun. Knowing violation of the law is a felony, which can carry a sentence up to 15 years in prison. Hamani asked the federal trial judge to throw out the charge against him. He contended that at least as applied to him, the law violated the Second Amendment, which protects the right of the people to keep and bear arms. U.S. District Judge Amos Mazant granted that request, pointing to a decision by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit holding that the law is unconstitutional when it is used to charge someone who may have been a habitual drug user but was not shown to be under the influence of drugs when he had the gun. On appeal, the federal government agreed with Hamani that based on the Fifth Circuit's ruling, the dismissal of the charge against Hamani should stand. In a brief unsigned opinion, the Court of Appeals upheld Mazant's ruling. The federal government then asked the justices to weigh in, which they agreed to do in October. On Thursday, the Supreme Court upheld the Fifth Circuit's decision, and it was a 9-0 decision too. It was unanimous too. In a 19-page opinion for the majority, Gorsuch explained that under the Supreme Court's 2022 decision in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Braun, courts should uphold restrictions on gun rights only when there is a tradition of such regulations in early U.S. history. And in 2023's U.S. versus Rahimi, Gorsuch continued, the court made clear that the government is not required to point to a historical twin. It is enough, he said, that the challenge regulation is consistent with the principles that underpin our regulatory tradition. And then the article goes on here. But yeah, that's another thing too, especially when you have more states that have legalized cannabis, and as we told you in the last story, there's more heightened situations for a lot of people. So yeah, they'll be, if I guess what they're saying is they don't want you sitting there, snorting a rail while you got a pistol in your hand like you're Scarface. But if you don't, then it should be okay to have a gun with that.
The fact that it was unanimous decision really is very interesting to me. Some very different people on that court, all of them pretty smart, but that's pretty interesting to me. I do find it, again, somewhat hypocritical, but also predictable and amusing that we have alcohol in homes everywhere. Alcohol is legal for purchase. It's legal to keep in your home. And I would be very interested in looking at the levels of gun crime that involve alcohol at some level.
Yeah. It's totally hypocritical.
Yeah. So I've heard about this on NPR, and I wanted to include it. Just really as a way of kind of just the continuing conversation that we have in this country about what drugs are okay and which ones are not, and what drugs do we criminalize people for using or possessing or selling, and what drugs do we celebrate in the media.
Yeah, and like I said in the story there too, that cannabis and cocaine are two very different drugs in the way they affect people, right? Obviously you're going to have the outliers that something that cannabis is not good for them at all, makes them, feel a certain way or whatever. But that's a very, very, very small minority of people. Whereas with cocaine heightens those levels. Like if you're angry, cocaine will make you really angry
and really nasty.
Yeah. And what do you want to do when you're really angry and nasty? You
pew,
want to grab
pew?
Pew, pew.
Pew,
you want to get the old pew pews out, right?
Yeah.
So I think to a degree, I agree that yes, certain drugs should, if you have a gun and you're taking certain drugs that alter your personality violently like that, you should probably not have that. But with cannabis, again, like I said, it doesn't affect everybody the same, but on the whole, it's more of you're going to want to pick up a sandwich more than you're going to want to pick up a gun when you're having a bit of the green. I'm just saying. I've as someone who has consumed cannabis quite a lot, I've never felt violent. Just violent sleep.
But alcohol can make people violent, and it can.
Alcohol can do that too.
Yeah, the person is you have the proverbial mean drunk or the blackout drunk that gets ragey. And again, we don't talk about restricting that. So there we are.
Probably because the alcohol lobby has a lot of people in their pockets in Congress too. So that's
and the hospitality industry.
Right.
And the fact that many of us, are people like me. I'm fancy, as you know, about wine. So you've got a culture around it. But just going to put that out there.
Yeah. And any abuse of any substance is wrong and can lead to devastating circumstances.
Indeed.
To what degree really depends on the person too. So if you're doing your drugs, just be careful. Just saying. We're not going to do a Nancy Reagan and fry an egg in a pan for you, but you should know by now.
Yes, indeed.
What drugs do. So we've had plenty of stuff in movies and TV shows that shows what drugs do. So and plenty of PSAs to tell us too. So we should all know by now.
Yes.
So we go down to Georgia, sweet Georgia. How sweet is it though? Palmetto USPS facility, OSIF demands answers after fourth employee death. What's up, Jackie? Good to see you. I saw you sneak in there too, Chuck. Good to see you. And Willie. Always a pleasure, guys. Dying at the post office. Boy, it brings new meaning to going postal, doesn't it? Instead of outward, it's inward. So U.S. Senator John Ossoff demanded answers from the USPS on Friday following the fourth employee death in 2 years at the Palmetto distribution facility. The progressive inquiry targets ongoing safety hazards and severe communication blackouts inside the building. Ossoff sent a formal letter to Postmaster General David Steiner demanding a full accounting of workplace safety standards by June 26, which should be Friday. Staff members at the Atlanta Regional Processing and Distribution Center have experienced poor working conditions and management struggles since it opened 2 years ago. Let me guess, there was a sign that said Amazon and they just pasted a sign over that said USPS.
Just saying.
Yeah. That's word on the street. Employees lack functional cell phone service inside the facility, rendering them unreachable during catastrophic family emergencies. Local news reports indicate that staff members fear retaliation from management if they speak out about these internal issues. That sounds very familiar. So unanswered questions. Officials have not yet confirmed the specific causes of death for the 4 employees who died inside the facility. It remains unclear what immediate steps the Postal Service will take to restore emergency communication channels for the staff. They don't have wall phones?
Apparently not. The emergency phones are not working. And it's a massive facility. And not only do they not have their personal phones, they can't respond to things like weather disasters, which is what killed those Amazon facility workers several years back. Yeah. But they can't call out for aid or for help, which is completely irresponsible. But yeah.
The public does not know why former Postmaster General Louis DeJoy failed to deliver promised details regarding a December 2024
Well, we know.
death at the site. Yeah, because he's a
He's a
fucking piece of
yeah.
shit.
Yeah.
Investigators have not disclosed if any management changes occurred after an audit exposed insufficient supervision. Employees have recently said that they haven't had any phone service since they came to that building, and someone's house had burned down to the ground, and they didn't even know it until they went on break. Ossoff wrote in his official inquiry, another emergency report revealed that another employee's child was in a very bad car accident and wasn't able to be reached. An Office of the Inspector General audit from last year explicitly detailed insufficient supervision and a poor employee work culture. Just like the 80s, postal workers are working hard to deliver the mail and deserve safe working conditions and proper management, Ossoff stated. Ossoff personally inspected the Palmetto facility in May 2024 and identified identical cellular service failures that continue to plague workers today. During a Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee hearing, the senator questioned DeJoy about a staff death that occurred in December of 2024. The Office of the Inspector General launched an intensive audit last year to investigate the location's operational deficiencies and poor leadership. The facilities serve as a primary regional processing hub, but has faced continuous scrutiny since its launch. And as we were kind of referencing there, going postal in the 80s was a thing where postal workers who were just, distraught, very, very frustrated, just had a lot of personal issues or whatever was going on, and were actually pew-pewing co-workers and people and the like. And it just seems like this is very much shades of that, only with a lot more societal and pressures that we have today in 2026.
It should also be noted that this facility is 1 million square feet. So failure to have the access to emergency communications is really quite serious. I mean, it's so many things can go wrong, and people could be collapsing as a result of conditions that could be remediated. Something could be addressed if they got the medical attention. If people can't get the medical attention, or they can't get a hold of a family member to provide consent or to get them to the hospital, and this is, basic maintenance is not happening. But remember, back in my day, on Civically Minded, I had a regular bit about the exploding mail trucks. And the mail trucks, on average, they were exploding one every 4 days. And you had postal workers being injured trying to save the mail. And this is the way we're treating these folks.
Yeah, it's just another symptom of the volatile society that we live in today. Speaking of volatile, Amazon drivers say a new update shuts off their AC automatically as dangerous heat waves intensify. New update shuts off their AC automatically. Wow, that is, I'd say that's cold, but no AC. It's probably
it's not. It's decidedly warm.
As temperatures climb, some Amazon delivery drivers say a recent software change in the company's electric vans has made hot weather shifts tougher by shutting off the AC soon after they step away during normal stops. Drivers posting online say the result is a van that keeps reheating between deliveries, forcing them to get back into a hotter cabin again and again over the course of a route. Driver discussions online have zeroed in on Amazon's custom Rivian electric delivery vans, known as EDVs, after reports that a software update changed how the air conditioning behaves during drop-offs. That's according to 404 Media. Posts and screenshots shared in a driver forum say the system can stop cooling after about 30 seconds if the driver is out of the seat and the sliding door stays open. One driver wrote, as many of you are aware, the EDVs just got a software update where if you are out of your seat for 30 seconds with the side door open, the AC switches off. We all hate this, obviously. They probably also hate having to keep empty water bottles in their vans for certain purposes. Amazon disputed the criticism and said the update was meant to improve cooling for drivers rather than limit it. Well, yeah, that's backwards thinking right there. An Amazon spokesperson said Rivian recently released a software update for electric delivery vehicles that actually extends climate control for drivers. As a result, the AC now runs for up to 10 minutes after a driver exits the vehicle, ensuring a cool cabin when they return. The timer resets at every stop. The AC only shuts off if the driver sliding door is left open for more than 30 seconds, a battery conservation measure. On neighborhood routes, drivers often leave the sliding door open while moving quickly among nearby homes, so the van may start warming up again before they return. That can turn what is supposed to be a comfort feature into a real safety concern. Amazon says the vans are air-conditioned and have cooling seats, but drivers have long said real-world conditions do not always reflect the company's stated protections during extreme heat. Across the delivery industry, older vehicles may have weak or unreliable AC, and heat safeguards have become a major labor issue. One driver wrote, "Thing is, we are up and about way longer than we are driving, so the AC turns off, and when it turns on again, we're already getting up before the air is even cold. It effectively makes the AC not work, and those fans get hot." Amazon, meanwhile, said the update was scheduled with summer in mind. This update was intentionally timed ahead of summer to improve driver comfort during the hottest months of the year. Driver safety and comfort in extreme temperatures remains our priority. Wink, wink. Yeah, so nickel and dime.
Whether it's the government or a private industry, here we go. Treat our workers like crap, and their safety and well-being doesn't really matter.
Yeah, well, the government and companies are starting to become one and the same anyway.
Starting?
Without, hiding it like they used. Now they're just doing it out in the open. They don't really care about that kind of stuff. It's like, oh, you're sweating. It's 106 degrees out there. Yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, we don't care. But we have to say we care. For press reasons. So, yeah, interesting story there for sure.
We also have our guest.
Yes, we do.
And
let me go ahead and bring her in. You want to do the old intro there?
I will do so. This is my very good friend, Catherine Diedrich. Catherine, good to see you.
Hi. I don't know. My screen is frozen. Hold on.
Okay. It happens.
You're sitting very
she's
still.
Got the AC. All the AC went into her place, and that froze up her screen.
I've got it. I don't even need it today. Chicago is actually kind of pleasant out, except for the ever-present risk of thunderstorms and wind.
Tornadoes. Actually, Illinois has been getting hit by a lot of tornadoes.
It has, but that is mostly downstate, although we have had some very vicious windstorms. It's not quite as bad as last year in May when a large tree fell on top of my car.
Ooh.
So
yeah, that was I remember.
It was very exciting. Yeah. I did get a new car out of it though. So
awesome. Nice. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, Catherine is an old friend of mine, and she is the mother of two children who are now teenagers. One is off at college, or back home from her first year at college, actually. Who have medical conditions that required accommodations in the schools. And I have well over 15 years now, has it been perhaps, or close to it? Almost, yeah. Following and knowing my friend here as she has navigated the public school system and the accommodations for children who have medical needs. And she's been an amazing advocate, but there's a lot that I've learned from her about what's available in schools and what is not available in schools. And I think there's often a presupposition that because we have the Americans with Disabilities Act, that public school is supposed to be open to any child, regardless of ability level or illness or nationality or whatever their status is. Public schools are available to all children, that the schools can automatically accommodate disabilities. What I've learned is that's not the case. And Catherine's been really helpful in helping me to understand that. So Catherine, can we talk a little bit about how you got involved and what you've learned and move on from there?
Absolutely. And you'll have to excuse me if I'm looking down sometimes because I have notes.
Of course. We
I
like
look
notes.
down. I look down a lot because I get sad a lot, but that's a personal thing. I probably shouldn't have shared that. Please continue.
Yeah.
We heard nothing.
Hear nothing, see nothing. Okay. So you're correct in that public schools are supposed to accommodate all students. And it's called the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. And the Americans with Disabilities Act is also part of this, where it's Section 504. Have you ever heard of a 504 plan? I don't know if anybody has kids in the school system, they will have heard of a 504 plan. A 504 plan provides medical accommodations for a child with medical needs. And there's also something called an IEP, which is different. That's an individual education plan, and that is normally for children with learning differences or developmental issues, not something that is a physical need. Although, you know, some kids have 504s with developmental stuff included. Some kids have IEPs with, you know, medical stuff included. So sometimes, depending on the school system and the school, sometimes that can be sort of wiggled. It is very expensive to educate a child with medical accommodations or other sorts of accommodations. I mean, that's just the way it is. If you have a kid in a wheelchair in your school, at least in Chicago, it can be really difficult because a lot of our school buildings are very old. You know, where in Chicago, you are automatically able to go to your neighborhood school. Well, if you have a child, for example, in a wheelchair, and your neighborhood school is 2 stories with no elevator, now your child can't attend your local school. Your child has to be placed elsewhere. And because of limitations on class size and school size and the number of teachers and personnel, it may not be a close school
Okay.
that your child will now attend. Your child now has to go to school across town. And maybe you don't have a car. And so you need bus service. But there aren't enough bus drivers. So you're now told, well, okay, you have to use a different transportation service, and the school system will pay for it. But the checks get held up. And so the private system doesn't come to get your kid who's been placed in a school across town because your local school can't accommodate them. Another issue is nursing services. And I'm only speaking from the perspective of somebody in Chicago. And this actually, we had a huge thing with this when my younger was in, I think she was in 2nd grade. My kids were diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the age of 7 and at the age of 6 and at the age of 5. It was less than 18 months apart. So it was really kind of a shock. We don't have any kind of diabetes on either side of the family. And my husband and I are not from like a community that tends to be more insular. My husband is Chinese and German, and I'm Irish. So, you know, the doctors couldn't come up with a reason for it. We just have, I guess, really good genetics for autoimmune disorders. So my kids, when they were little, they needed nursing care because, you know, you can't just have any average person sticking a needle into your kid. That's just sort of a general understanding. In Chicago, because the Chicago school system and the Chicago's teachers union are constantly at odds, the Chicago school system decided that rather than having actual school nurses who were part of the Chicago Teachers Union, they would get rid of all the school nurses. They would get rid of the whole school nursing program. And what they would do instead is hire a nursing service to provide per diem nurses. Now, these were not school nurses, but the attitude of the Chicago public school system was a nurse is a nurse, which is not true.
No.
So in our case, we had, because of this, the per diem system, sometimes we had a nurse and sometimes we didn't. Because my children needed a nurse there, I would drop them off in the morning and then I would go sit in the hallway to see if a nurse would show up. If a nurse didn't show up, depending on what was going on that day, I might have to take my children and take them home because they weren't safe at school.
Mm-hmm.
A nurse would show up and tell me she was only going to be there for half the day. Well, then I'd have to come back at noon and either sit there for the afternoon and take care of my kids or take my kids home for the afternoon. So it was really affecting their education. It was affecting my life too, because you can't have a job when at any moment you might need to drop everything and go sit in a school. When my younger daughter was in second grade, I called the nurse to say, it was lunchtime, to find out, how much insulin my kid was getting. And the nurse said, well, your younger daughter's blood sugar was extremely high. And so I gave her, it was like 9 units of insulin. That is a huge amount of insulin for a child. That is a massive amount of insulin. And I said, well, what was her blood sugar? And it was very, very high. And I said, well, did you make sure that she had washed her hands before you checked the blood sugar? Because when you check blood sugar, you're piercing the skin with a needle. Well, if there's something on their hands, like sugar, that's going to be in the sample and the blood sugar is going to be super duper high. And she said, well, I think she did. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, well, the most that you can give in terms of insulin with the pump, it has a safety setting. You can only give 5 units of insulin. She said, well, I overrode the safety setting.
Oh, God.
I was in the grocery store and I literally left my grocery cart in the middle of the store, drove like a bat out of hell to the school and swept my daughter into the bathroom, scrubbed her hands, tested her blood sugar. Her blood sugar was not high. And she had 9 units of insulin on board.
Oh, my God.
That could have killed her.
Yeah.
If I had not called the school and found out how much insulin they gave her, I came in and I grabbed my daughter and I snatched my older daughter. And I guess my older daughter told me later that her entire classroom thought that my younger daughter had died. And I swept them off and I went to McDonald's because the important thing is carbohydrates. And I put a large order of fry in front of her and a chocolate shake. And I said, eat. And my younger daughter was sort of like, oh no. Shake, however shall I cope? And started shoveling fries into her mouth. She really likes fries. And we did not have, and I sat there with the rescue shot of glucagon, which is a shot that you give a diabetic that dumps all of the sugar in their liver into their bloodstream. So when you have a child or an adult or diabetic who goes into hypoglycemic shock and can't function, you give them glucagon. Now it's a spray that you put up their nose like Narcan, and which I find much easier to use. I've only ever used it once, but my daughter didn't, have any negative effects from it because I was able to be right there. I actually, for the entire time my children were in grade school, was never more than half an hour away from school. I could not go half an hour away. So that really affected my life as well. We went back to this. I went back to the school and the nurse was gone. And the nursing service refused to tell me who she was, refused to give her the name. And I said the magic words. My husband is a lawyer. He is, as it happens. Still wouldn't give it to me. The school was not at fault. It was not the school's fault. And the school was working with me because the school, because they had good accommodations for disabled kids, had a relatively high number of them. And there was one that had a tracheotomy tube. There was a kid who had just had a heart transplant. I mean, this was a really big deal.
Mhm.
And I ended up, I promise this links to what we're talking about. I ended up making a complaint to the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights, a department that no longer exists. This department doesn't exist anymore.
When did it stop? When did it cease to exist?
2025, I think. It was part of the dismantling of the Department of Education.
Okay.
It was taken apart. One of the departments that is kind of, oh, now it's part of the Justice Department. But where? Who do you call? I called them and I gave them the story. I had documented it with times and dates and everything like that. And I got a call back from an attorney with the Office of Civil Rights who said, okay, we're going to go ahead and we are going to open a case. The only reason we were able to get any resolution was through the federal government. That's not an option anymore. You don't get to do that anymore. In addition, the only reason 504s and IEPs have any teeth to them, the only reason why schools are, whether they like it or not, forced to accommodate children with any kind of disability is because of Section 504 of the Americans with Disabilities Act, and because of IDEA, which is much more nebulous. It's a lot, you have to include students with disabilities. You have to accommodate them. 504 spells it out. And now I'm going to check my notes again to make sure I'm correct.
Sure.
Sorry, I don't want to be giving incorrect information.
No, absolutely. I appreciate that.
So one of the things that the Trump administration did in October of 2024 is they fired all the staff in the Department of Education that was responsible for distributing federal funding and ensuring states use it to provide disabled students supports and services they need to in school. So first, they took away all the money that schools were using for these accommodations, which they are federally required. This is not a state thing. It's not a school system thing, not a community thing, not your school board. The federal government is responsible for paying money to the school system so that they can accommodate these kids. Historically, the federal government hasn't given enough money. I mean, like, if you could install an elevator, your kid could go to its local school, but all they have the money to do is send your kid across town and pay for them to go across town. Now there's no money for that. There's no money coming from the federal government to make sure that these students get the services they need. It's, what they call an unfunded mandate. You've heard of that? You have to do this, but, we're not going to make sure there's money so that you can do it. So that's one issue, is they took away the money, but more importantly, they took away the people that administrated the program. Bureaucrats. They got rid of them. So I'm going to adjust my camera a little. So they took that away. They gutted the staff who were in charge of the IDEA program. The Department of Education fired half its staff in March of 2025. We know that. But then they fired more people, specifically the people who administrated the money and IDEA program. Out. They're not there anymore. So then we have 504 of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is the program that forces state, local, whoever else, you have to accommodate this. which is what we appealed under. We said, we contacted the department, and the Department of Education said, okay, you can't just have this sort of free-floating nurses who don't know how to take care of children.
Mm-hmm.
The accommodation that we received was that grade school received a permanent nurse who
Mm-hmm.
would follow my child until she was graduated from 8th grade. No matter what school she went to, there would be a permanent nurse who
Mm-hmm.
was responsible for my child. We would not have gotten that had I not known who to call.
Right.
And just as an aside, there are no interpreters available. So had I not been a native English speaker married to an attorney, I would not have been able to get this accommodation for my child. I would have been screwed. Anyway, going back to 504, we now have, in September of 2024, 17 red states filed a case against the U.S. government to completely get rid of Section 504. They don't have it anymore. So we don't have any funding for IDEA anymore. We don't have an Office of Civil Rights for students with disabilities or any other kind of problem. You know, if your teacher is a racist, you can't call the Office of Civil Rights anymore because it doesn't exist. You call the Department of Justice. And right now we know how seriously they're taking civil rights complaints, which is to say, if the school is making you learn something that makes you uncomfortable, you know, maybe you can file a civil rights claim. But if your teacher's racist, ableist, sexist, good luck. 17 states want to make it so that they don't have to accommodate students with disabilities. As an aside, private schools do not have to do that. And as a parent of disabled kids, I belong to a couple of groups of parents with disabled kids, especially with type 1 diabetes. And we have people coming into our groups with newly diagnosed children telling us constantly, my child has been expelled. Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, so what happened was a bunch of schools or a bunch of states were like, okay, they dropped out. And now it is, I believe it's 7 states. No, it's 6 now because
Yeah,
Indiana.
Chuck is saying
Yeah.
6. So
Hi,
okay,
Chucky.
yeah.
Yeah, it's 7, it's 6 states that are now because Indiana dropped out. But it is still 6 states.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a lot of
That are
states. I mean,
like-
there's a lot of kids in those
That's a lot
states.
of kids in those
Yeah.
states. And we're talking about disabilities from everything from severe peanut allergies
Yeah.
to students on ventilators.
Yeah.
All of them are guaranteed an education of some
Yeah.
kind, even if it is only that they go to the school
Right.
and they are there.
They're present.
We were
Yeah.
lucky enough to be in a grade school that was very accommodating. We had kids from all over the city because word gets out which schools will actually accommodate. And because in Chicago, you can enter a lottery to get into certain schools. You can rank them. There's ways to,
Yeah.
get around schools. But it is a serious concern right now. If you have a disabled child, first of all, where's your kid going to go to school?
Right.
Second of all, is my child going to be safe at
Right.
school? In a lot of states, good luck.
Yeah.
And then finally, what kind of education is my kid going to get in school? Chicago, for all its flaws, and it has many, especially our school system, I have gone in front of the Chicago School Board a number of times and spoken about the nursing issue where, my general message was, you are bad people who should feel bad. And which was very awkward when one of the school board members was actually married to my child's 4th grade teacher.
Well, there you go.
I'm like, hi, Al, you're terrible. So it is a big issue right now, these accommodations. And I think when we say accommodations, sometimes we think, oh, special things we have to do for the students. Somebody has to, go out of their way. Not necessarily. The accommodation can just be there's a nurse in the school. The accommodation can be my child has an extra half an hour with standardized testing because they have dyspraxia and their motor skills are slower. These are all accommodations that schools are forced to make. If the 504 program goes away, well, essentially what happens is 504 is part of the Americans with Disabilities Act. So I think for a lot of these 6 states, it is the first chip in the wall of getting rid of the Americans with Disabilities Act, because you guys know you're a news show. They want to get rid of the funding that helps disabled people stay in their families and stay in their homes. The ability to warehouse disabled people and developmentally delayed people. Just, get them out of here. We don't want to look at them.
It seems like another form of collective punishment that's been going on, not just with kids, but with people in general in the country too,
And it also it points to me, okay, if a child cannot be accommodated in the school, or is not being accommodated in the school, or a person with disabilities, is not able to, say, work outside the home, who cares for that person? Well, there's the warehousing, of course, but there's also who often provides caregiving. Do they tend to have something in common?
Yes. Yes, they do. We have a huge number of immigrants who come and get there. I mean, have you ever been in a hospital and not encountered a Filipina nurse?
Yeah.
She's 4'10" and 55 years old and will happily kill a man. I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong. And she cooks and she brings food for everybody. That's my experience. I've been in a lot of hospitals. But yeah, there's a lot of immigrants and people of color who work as what they call paraprofessionals, which are in classroom assistants for people with disabilities. My older daughter is a summer camp counselor with the Chicago Park District. And this year, because she is diabetic, she tends to have at least one child who has a paraprofessional in her group, just in case something terrible would happen. There would be another adult there. And she has never had a paraprofessional who was born in America, because it's not particularly well paid. It's hard work, especially if you're assisting a child in a wheelchair who has some kind of physical disability where they need to be moved, they need to be picked up. And also, you don't just have white kids with disabilities. You have kids from non-English speaking families. And it's super important to have paraprofessionals who speak the family's language.
And understand the culture.
And understand the culture. So, that's also vitally important. And I'm sure that's, one of the basic reasons, we're going to get rid of all of these people too.
And also, I was just in addition to that, I was also thinking that think about women who there's a move within certain segments of our current zeitgeist who want to get women back in the home, who want to strip women of their ability to support themselves. They want to they want to do that, and to say to them, we're not going to do anything for your children in the school. If you want your child to get an education, you will have to either facilitate this yourself, taking that woman, it's oftentimes a woman, not always the mother, taking her out of the workforce, or you're going to have to care for the child at home, and by extension, any family member with a disability.
Right. Like, for example, despite the fact that I have a bachelor's and a master's, I have not been in the workforce since 2005. I was effectively removed from the workforce. First, I had kids, and the price of childcare meant that I had never in my life earned enough money in a year that would make it, make financial sense to stay home. It made financial sense for me to stay home. When my oldest was in first grade, she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. When my youngest was in kindergarten, she was diagnosed with diabetes, and it became very clear to me very fast that medical childcare was not something we could afford. And because of the issues with the school, because of the issues with nursing, because of the fact that I couldn't be more than a half an hour away from the school, the fact that a per diem nurse whose name I never got and is presumably still licensed almost killed my child. I was taken out of the workforce. And that is unfortunately something that happens a lot. And when you're dealing with a diabetic, 90 days of insulin for 2 diabetic children, cash price, is over $5,000. And that is just the insulin. That's not the endocrinologist visits. That's not the continuous glucose monitors. That's all kinds of things like that. And I'm actually reading down here, Jacqueline. Charter schools are a little weird. It's kind of up to the school whether or not they accommodate. I because this is my hill to die on for accommodations. At this point, I go to other people's 504 meetings, because if the school gets mad at the parents, that's one thing. I'm a total stranger. I can come in and say, this child is entitled to XYZ, PDQ. I have written a 504 that accommodates all of these things. And I can cite you all of the cases to back up why this happens. And I am a white native English speaker. And, I'm going to sit here and try to kill you with my brain. I can force an issue the way a lot of parents can't. And so that's something that I volunteer to go to these things with parents with diabetic kids, because I can be awful to a school and your kid is not going to, suffer from backlash because my kids don't go to the school. But charter schools are kind of difficult. I actually applied to a charter school to see what they were going to do. And they were happy to take my children right up until I told them my children needed nursing care. And then then suddenly my children were not a good fit for the school. Charter schools have, despite the fact, let's not get into school choice. I get really mad about that. Charter schools in most states can choose the children that they educate, because they are allowed to not take children who are not a good fit. And wouldn't you know it, kids with ADHD, kids with physical problems, kids with developmental issues, they kick out. They're like, oh no, we can't accommodate your child because your child's expensive to educate. And that's kind of, what the school choice movement is towards, a 2-tier education system where the kids that are cheap to educate can go to a private school or go to a charter school. The kids that are expensive to educate, who need paraprofessionals, who need help, who need nursing care, they're going to stay in the public school system. But the money is going to follow the students. So the kids in the private schools and kids in the charter schools, the ones that are cheap to educate, they're going to have, the school is going to make money off those things. And the kids that are left in the public school system are going to be the ones who are, who need accommodations, who need help, who need whatever else. And thus, the children left in the public school system are not going to get nearly as good an education. So,
wow.
In conclusion, everybody should be concerned about this, because the disabled population is something anybody can join at any moment.
At any time. Yep.
At any time. I had really healthy kids right up until I didn't. I had children who didn't catch viruses. I had children who had never been sick. And then both of them suddenly developed a autoimmune disorder without a cure. And everybody can eventually, something like that can happen. You are only one illness, one accident, one whatever away from needing accommodations yourself. And so I think that this is an issue that more people should talk about and more people should be concerned about, because this idea that somehow, oh, it's disabled people, oh, it's this, oh, it's that. It's not. It could be you. It is your grandmother and grandfather who have become disabled through age.
Right.
It is going to affect your family.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
it was, it didn't, I mean, Lainey and I'm not going to out her age or anything, but she's the same age as I am. And I remember back in
you're
the
both
days.
25.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Never mind the fact that I've known Lainey for like 30 years.
Yeah.
Well, you have a time machine, and you don't really have to go into that right now. It's fine. But yeah, like when, and I was talking to some other Gen Xers the other day. We were talking about where did all of these like maladies come from? Like when we were kids, you every once in a while there was a child that was a student that was in a wheelchair or something like that, and the school made accommodations. If it was like a flat school, one level, they put the ramps in and stuff like that. But it wasn't. It just seems like you flash forward here to like 40 some odd years later, and anybody could have just something like that. And of course, these schools and the parents, a lot of times who have the quote unquote healthy kids, don't understand that this is becoming more prevalent and there needs to be more accommodations for these students.
It's not necessarily more prevalent. We see
it gets more exposure, it seems like now with the internet and stuff like that. So it seems more prevalent.
I didn't have disabled kids in my school. I was in a terrible accident when I was a junior in high school, and I was left using crutches for a very long time. And my school did not have an elevator. And my dad went into the school and talked to the principal about what accommodations they could make for the fact that I was on crutches. And this is, I don't know, 1988, because much the same age as you guys. And the principal of a Catholic school looked my father dead in the eyes and said, "We don't have students like that here." Because they didn't have to accommodate. Well, Catholic schools still didn't have to accommodate, but they didn't have to accommodate. They don't have students like that. There aren't students like that. And in terms of like the more prevalence of disability and things like that, we see it more. But I think also it's identified easier now. My dad was born in 1929. And I always tell this story about him. He says, "No, you know what? We didn't have kids with, dreadful food allergies, but we sure did have a lot of kids who just dropped dead for no reason."
And people did that. People did,
or had to, or were too sick to go to school, or had to go live with their grandparents somewhere else because they couldn't live in the city. So, the things that we see now, I hear that a lot of, oh, kids, they've got all these new allergies. Well, they're not new. We just identified them. Insulin only became available in 1915. Prior to 1915, if you got diabetes, you just died. I mean, it was just, you just died. That's what happened. So we're now seeing the same thing with these illnesses that leave kids in wheelchairs and leave kids with disabilities. A lot of times they just died. They were not around to be educated.
And I remember, I was at a school, and this would have been because I was born in 69. I'm going to out us both, Warren. But I remember, and this was in the mid 70s. I went to a school that, in fact, did have special education. It had a pretty progressive. I think it had 2-story building, but I do believe it had an elevator that was only for adults. But these kids ranged. They had a range of disabilities, including some who were blind, people, children with, who may have used wheelchairs, or, who had developmental delays. And so we did see them. Now, they were in a special education class. And there were some school students who were integrated, who were mainstreamed into regular classrooms, but then they would come out for a special assistance with various things. whether it was reading or emotional support or whatnot. That did exist. But in this particular school, they had more facilities for kids that had more significant disabilities. And they did a lot. I mean, I will say that I'll give them some credit. And this was in Des Plaines, suburb of Chicago, where there was a real commitment to that. But there were other schools that had nothing of the sort, or had very, very, very minimal support. And there it was. And I think sometimes also one thing that also happened is that there was a greater expectation for kids who are in school. You graduate from high school, you go to college, and there was the the demand for higher degrees to go into a variety of jobs. I suspect that children with learning disabilities may have just gone, dropped out of high school when they were 16, but they could have gone into something that didn't require them, the trades, factory work, whatever the case may be, and nobody paid that much attention to it. And there's been a number of changes, and I think that that's one of the things, something else that's had some real impact.
Yeah, it really has. We see that sort of thing more. Like, I don't know. I hear a lot of people talking about, well, autism is so much more for. No, we're just diagnosing it more. My dad's uncle knew every property line in the town, to the extent that people would mark off parcels of land without a surveyor because Charlie said that that's where the property line was. But no, there's no autism in the family. That was just something that happened. People didn't talk about this stuff. And now we're kind of requiring a certain level of education for anybody to go on and live independently, while at the same time we are taking away the funding and the ability of disabled and elderly people to live independently. And in doing that, just like, with the school choice thing, where we're creating a two-tiered system of people who are non-disabled, who have, are easy to educate, they're up here with the money. And the people down here are the ones who are not getting as good of an education, or where it's not safe for them to go to school. We're doing the same thing where, okay, it's post-high school, even post-college, and we're going in. And if we are eliminating these accommodations, we now have another two-tiered system with people who have enough education and have enough money to live independently, and the people down here who don't. Who do you think is going to end up in those institutions? It's not going to be the white middle-class people whose parents were able to independently finance these accommodations. We keep moving towards a two-tiered system for everything at this point, where there's rules that separate.
Indeed. Well, thank you so much, Catherine, for being on the show today. We really appreciate it. And as I wanted to mention is don't wait for an invitation to come back. You get a bee in your bonnet about something.
Show up.
Seriously, just ping us. We'll have you on. If something comes up, I think we would like to follow this.
I can get mad about any number of things in education.
You and me both. Yeah. We're good like
do that. And I'm far enough away from the grade school years now that it's not quite as to talk about it, but because my kids, I was going into senators' offices. I was going into City Hall. We have to address this nursing situation, even if we only get CNAs in. Guess what we have right now? We have a nursing shortage.
Yeah.
So, what happens now? Well, nobody knows, because we're getting rid of the funding for the paraprofessionals and the CNAs who are able to be trained to do nursing work.
Yeah.
So, two-tier system that the government is currently really in favor of doing. So it was lovely talking to you guys. I actually am going to bail and go pick up a kid from work.
All right.
And hi, Chucky. It was good interacting with you.
We appreciate
I've also known
you.
Chucky for 30 years. Okay. It was lovely talking to you guys.
Bye-bye.
Take care. That was good talking to her. Yeah,
It was good talking to her. Yeah, I mean, this was stuff this I've been following for a while. Um, and I remember when this happened with the nurse, and I actually did a deep dive into it. And I've always been on the assumption that schools had nurses who were actual nurses, who actually were pediatric nurses who had training in being a school nurse, because that's its own subspecialty. And it turns out many schools don't have nurses at all, or if they do, they said that they're per diem temporary nurses who may not even be pediatric nurses, and who certainly aren't certified as school nurses. And I think it's to the detriment of the kids and the teachers and the community when there isn't a nurse on premise.
Yeah, it's that outsourcing business. It's just, they think it, because it works for some companies in the corporate world, like that, we figure, we instead of, because a nurse isn't just someone that provides medical care. There's someone there that is, in a manner of speaking, provides a bedside manner for the child too, right?
Well,
the child has some sort of medical condition, but also that kid probably has some fear too, and needs someone to give them a personable experience. And when you got some person, some rando coming in and out or whatever, and they, the kids won't trust the nurses. And of course, like in her situation, you're going to have a nurse that almost kills somebody, and then there's no overt justice for it.
Absolutely. And you have a nurse also, there's case management. The school nurse who's there knows which kids are coming from impoverished homes where there may be some malnutrition, possibly abuse. But has some idea who's a foster kid, whose parent has a history of alcoholism. There's comprehensive management for these kids. Again, also you have substitute teachers coming in. They don't know if the kid is faking something or if or what's going. The nurse is there to say, yeah, I mean this is what's going to be happening, and if we need this kid needs attention, they can reinforce that, and that's not happening in many schools, and because there's no investment in the kids.
No. Well, no, you hear some people screaming to the rooftops, no abortions. We can't kill these kids. But once the kid's born, it's like, it's like, well, where does the care stop at the virtue signaling, or where does it, or is there any care at all? And it's like, I'm someone who doesn't even have kids, and I worry about these kids.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We have
to imagine what parents go through.
Yeah, and again, Catherine's a woman with some resources. She's an American citizen, educated, native English speaker. She is married, and she's in a position. I mean, it's as much as this has constrained her in many ways. She's also been in a position to actually do it. There are people out there who aren't.
No,
a lot of single parents. True. Yeah,
good to have a husband who's a lawyer too.
Always a good idea.
Or a wife, either or whoever your spouse is, lawyer up, because that may be your only recourse these days. Well, let's get to the recurring tide. We got stories we've been covering and different variations of whatnot. So soaring AI costs starting to bite companies in the ass. Oh no.
Imagine that.
How about looking into this stuff before you start laying off people? Soaring AI costs push enterprise buyers to cheaper Chinese models. Look at that. That's the American way. Go cheap. Go Chinese. Large AI labs like Anthropic and OpenAI could see their growth impacted by AI users' efforts to control costs, the Financial Times reported. Companies are looking to better manage their use of AI after seeing the costs of the technology rise, according to the report. The old bait and switch. See, you use this AI, it's all nice and cheap, man. You get rid of these people, and then you get rid of the people.
Gotcha.
Let me unwrap you, sucker. So the old bait and switch. The rising costs have been driven by the shift from chatbots to agents, which consume more computing power, as well as the AI labs move from flat subscriptions to token-based billing, per the report. This has created an opening for Chinese AI labs that are able to charge less than the U.S. companies due to their more efficient models and China's lower energy costs, the report said. Just a little fun fact about China, they have the most, they use the most reusable energy technology like wind and solar. They're using like gigawatts and megawatts of this stuff. And we're over here, praying for a lightning bolt to give us more electricity. And data centers, of course, killing us. It seems like they've gotten their situation tamped down with that. So Chinese AI models now have greater token consumption than US ones, which marks a change since the beginning of the year, the report said, citing data from Open Router. Companies that encouraged their employees to use AI tools when the costs were lower are now using a variety of methods to cut back. Maybe actually doing the work themselves instead of giving it to AI. Executives quoted in the article said their companies have introduced usage caps, tasked employees to use the right tool for each task, shared cost-saving ideas such as switching to models that are older and cheaper, and adopted open source models. Yes, the open source ones. That's freebie models, or at least free right now. Payments, I guess that's this thing here, reported in February that as enterprises accelerated their AI usage from pilot programs to production scale deployments, they found that the commercial infrastructure underpinning the traditional software as a service doesn't translate cleanly to AI. The software as a service. You can't spell software as a service or SaaS without ASS.
I got a lot of sass, Uncle Warren.
Yeah, they're more the ASS variety than the SaaS. Rather than charging per employee, AI charges per token, per application programming interface, API call, that's what that is, per generated image, per inference cycle, per autonomous workflow executed in the background while no human is watching, or in some cases, all of them simultaneously. It was reported in May that Uber exhausted its full year 2026 AI budget by April. Oops. Leading executives to say that the company was back to the drawing board and that the productivity case had not closed. On June 1st, it was reported that Walmart limited employees' AI usage amid rising demand. The company began offering a set number of tokens for each employee to use with its in-house AI agent Code Puppy. Before this, workers had an unlimited number of tokens. Yeah, so that's the old AI bait and switch. I kind of knew this was going to happen, when, especially the ones that started getting rid of laying off people. And they say, oh, AI is going to take care of it. And like, not so fast there, Chief. Turns out it didn't.
Yeah. It was kind of predictable. And I think, I think in some cases, the companies who have found this out early enough may be able to mitigate some of the problem. For those that don't, they can get themselves into a real pickle when suddenly the AI that they're using comes back. They've really hiked up those fees. They've hiked up the costs. They've let go of their employees who are now not happy with them. Some of those employees, because they're talented, may go back, be getting better jobs elsewhere. Because once those companies, the companies that early on decided to pull in the reins to rein in AI spending and realize that it's probably better to have humans doing these jobs, will be able to hire these folks who are actually talented. Some of those folks may also just drop out of their niche and they may go into something else. Now they're going to have to go back to the drawing board, hire people to come back, and that takes a while that's costly. It's very costly. And there could be a major bust. And part of that bust would be companies that were very premature in dropping their staff.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be ancient to remember the .com bubble that burst,
Lord.
right? I mean, it's the same frenzy back then as there is now with AI. And a lot of people who remember that are saying this is the same thing's going to happen. The AI bubble's going to burst. And good luck trying to get those good people back if they haven't already found jobs at other places that won't replace you with AI. Human loyalty. How about that? That's something you don't hear about much these days at all.
Not really.
So yeah, AI is definitely, while it has its advantages, the downside of it is it's just way too much for it. I wish you could have like, because I know like creators and stuff who use AI because they can't afford, or they don't know somebody who's really talented artistically, or they can't afford to hire somebody, and they just need that little edge to try and get ahead with whatever project they're using. So they'll use that, or they'll use it for organizational purposes and stuff, which is fine. But when you start replacing people with it, yeah, you're asking for a hell of a lot of trouble. Let's see. So we go to talking about the deportation and the clergy. This is up your alley there. You brought this in.
Yeah.
They have already suffered enough. Central African clergy respond to U.S. deportation. Religious leaders in the Central African Republic say they were stunned by the arrival Friday, as June 12th, of migrants deported from the U.S. to their country without cultural or familial ties, questioning why people who fled religious and political persecution were sent to a nation still grappling with its own history of sectarian violence and instability. The U.S. government flew at least 24 migrants from countries including Iran, Afghanistan, Turkey, Armenia, and Georgia to Bangui, the Central African Republic's capital, as part of the Trump administration's third country deportation agreements with several African and Latin American countries. El Salvador being one of those places. You've heard about that prison down there.
Mm-hmm.
Human rights groups and immigration lawyers say several of those deported had established credible fears of persecution in their own home countries, including torture, imprisonment, and death. Among them were Christian converts at risk and at least one Iranian pro-democracy activist who could face severe punishment if returned to Iran for her political activity and religious beliefs. I was surprised to hear that migrants who fled persecution in their own countries had been deported to ours. Jean Ngaba, an evangelical pastor in southern Central African Republic, told Religion News Service some of the deportees had been granted without withholding of removal, a legal protection preventing their deportation to their countries of origin because of the risk of persecution. Rather than being returned home, they were transferred to the Central African Republic under a bilateral agreement between Washington and Bangui. Advocacy groups have expressed concern that the migrants could face onward refoulement, meaning they could eventually be sent back to the countries they originally fled. In particular, the Iranian American Legal Defense Fund has warned that deporting Iranians to the Central African Republic is potentially fatal, pointing to close ties between the African country and Moscow, key ally of Iran. The Central African Republic is poor and still trying to heal after years of conflict between Christians and Muslims, said Ngaba, who works on local grassroots peace and reconciliation initiatives. It is inhumane for any government to do this to people who have already suffered because of their beliefs or political views. So far, no church, mosque, or faith-based charity has been formally tasked with receiving the deportees, although religious leaders interviewed by RNS said they would be willing to help if asked. As religious leaders, we're ready to assist them if we are called upon or if we meet them, Ngaba said. According to immigration advocates and officials familiar with the operation, the deportees are being temporarily housed in apartments in Bangui while authorities determine their next steps. Their long-term future remains uncertain, and the Central African government has not publicly clarified whether they will remain in the country or eventually seek asylum elsewhere. The International Organization for Migration is providing post-arrival humanitarian assistance at the request of the Central African government, but has stressed that it is not involved in the U.S. deportation process itself. Cardinal, this person. Yeah, not even going to try that one. The Catholic Archbishop of Bangui and internationally recognized advocate for interfaith peace said he was aware of the arrivals, but was still gathering information about the situation. Notice they didn't repeat his name down here. Good on you, article. The cardinal said the Catholic Church would be willing to assist the migrants if called upon, reflecting the church's commitment to helping people in need. Muslim leaders have also voiced concerns over the deportations. Cleric Musa Ibrahim, I'll attempt these names because I'm used to saying them and butchering them. A Bangui-based Muslim leader who has worked to promote peace and reconciliation said many of the deportees had escaped religious persecution, only to arrive in a country with its own complex history of sectarian tensions. Yes, kind of almost like out of the frying pan into another frying pan. Most of these people escape persecution because of their beliefs, Ibrahim said. But here in the Central African Republic, we have a long history of religious violence because of conflict and weak state authority. Muslims have fought Christians and Christians have fought Muslims. For more than a decade, the country has experienced repeated cycles of violence, including the predominantly Muslim Salika coalition and the largely Christian and animist anti-Balaka militias. Although a ceasefire reached in late last year reduced large-scale fighting, insecurity remains a challenge in parts of the country where armed groups continue to operate. According to the Open Doors World Watch List 2026, the Central African Republic remains among countries where Christians face significant persecution, particularly in areas where government control is weak. And the article goes on here. You can read the rest of that on our Substack. But yeah, and it you know, just people who aren't religious being deported to these countries are seeing it rough. And I can't even imagine people of faith doing, going somewhere like that. It just seems like more collective punishment for some reason.
It's the cruelty, and as Chuck keeps on pointing out, the cruelty here is the point. It's when you send some, you say we don't want you here, so we're going to dump you someplace where you don't know the language, you don't have any friends, you don't have any family, and where the situation may be far more unstable than the place that you came out, the place that you left, that you departed. And this is what we're going to do to you. There's absolutely no sense of a duty of care for these folks. And I think it's obvious that they're doing this to discourage people from even attempting to come to the U.S. and claim asylum.
Yeah.
So I think that, that they're doing this as a way to just completely distress people to the point that they might not even make the attempt, or that they will just disappear or make themselves disappear as quickly as possible into a world of unregulated labor here in the U.S., which a lot of businesses rely on because they don't want to have to pay a minimum wage or hold to even basic safety standards. And the utter cruelty of this. And I found this article and I wanted to share it with our viewers because it just shows just how incredibly cruel this system is. This is not the way to treat human beings.
Yeah, this is one of many ways that this shows this government doesn't care about its people. Here's another example. A federal judge rules against state SNAP waivers. Pardon me. A federal judge blocked the Trump administration's attempt to prevent SNAP users from using food stamps to pay for sugary drinks and candy. Judge Amy Berman Jackson of the Federal District Court in Washington ruled Monday that the U.S. Department of Agriculture could not approve waivers by states that ban SNAP dollars for unhealthy food purchases. The USDA had approved waivers for more than 20 states, considered a major victory by the Make America Healthy Again movement, or MAHA, not to be confused with AHA and Take On Me. Take on me. In her ruling, Jackson said the Trump administration and USDA could take lawful steps to encourage healthier food choices, but they could not violate the law and their own regulations along the way. As much as Trump tried, he tried to take your soda pop and candy away. Hey, some bitch. But them old federals said, nope. You're seeing a lot more judges turn on Trump now. So him taking stuff to court is probably not going to benefit him for much longer. In March, consumers in 5 states, Colorado, Iowa, Nebraska, Tennessee, and West Virginia, sued the Trump administration over the SNAP ban, arguing it violated laws authorizing SNAP and governing policy changes. The National Center for Law and Economic Justice filed the lawsuit on behalf of the consumers, arguing the USDA authorized states to narrow the statutory definition of food haphazardly without statutory authority or evaluation methodology and without notice or input from people and retailers. The policy directly impacted. Retailers complained the waivers made things difficult at checkout. Yes, more bureaucracy. And of course, a slippery slope too, because that could always lead to, well, you know what, this isn't food either, and they start whittling it down little by little. Numerator released data in May showing that the waivers would affect roughly 1/3 of SNAP participants, and 63% of SNAP consumers would use non-SNAP dollars to purchase soda if it became ineligible, whether to buy as usual or shift to less expensive alternatives. 60% said the same about candy, and 45% said the same about energy drinks. If soda and energy drinks became ineligible, over 30% of SNAP consumers said they would possibly substitute tea, juice, and coffee. Candy showed a similar pattern, with fruit, ice cream, and fruit snacks each cited by over 30% of SNAP users as potential replacements, according to Numerator. In states implementing waiver restrictions by the end of this year, SNAP households intending to redirect spending to other categories or cut back purchases could drive sales declines of up to $430 million for soda, $300 million for candy, and $100 million for energy drinks. And instead of trying to limit people on SNAP when it comes to their food, if you sincerely want them to have healthy alternatives, maybe say, well, if you spend your SNAP dollars on vegetables, for example, or fruits and vegetables, that the money that you spend that month you may be able to get in addition to your next SNAP,
yeah. And there's been restrictions. We've reported on this.
So, I mean, that's not necessarily an end all be all, but that could be one option to incentivize people to eat more healthy foods instead of punishing them by saying, oh, well, soda and candy. Well, in moderation, soda and candy are just fine. They're probably about as safe as anything else with microplastics in it and whatnot. But, this is, again, it's just more punishment.
It is. And this is something I've been railing against for a long time. As we reported a couple of weeks ago, there was one state, was it Mississippi or Missouri? I don't know, but they'd cut the program that would double SNAP benefits at a farmer's market. And this is a state by state basis, and the farmers markets can make their own decisions about this sort of thing. But again, these programs have been successful where you can get the tokens and you can actually multiply, in some cases, triple your SNAP dollars at farmers markets. So, that's one option. The other thing that they've pointed out is that when you have these states that are going to restrict certain categories of food because they've decided that it's unhealthy, that mucks up things at the cash register. And that makes it harder for the retailer. It's humiliating for the consumer, and it makes things harder on the cashier, and it slows things down for that business. And grocery stores are operating on razor thin margins. So this is disincentivizing the acceptance of SNAP benefits. And again, when we get into, well, what is a healthy food and what is not a healthy food, that is not as straightforward as everybody wants to think. Some of these, for example, these programs will say you can't have candy, but you could have a granola bar or a protein bar that, may have some additional nutrients added, but are still high in sugar and high in calories. They will say you can't have something that is sugar-free, even though they will use the term sugary foods or sugary drinks when the food has no sugar in it at all. Or it might say it's okay to buy juice, but juice is often very high in sugar. As a matter of fact, the American Academy of Pediatrics has warned against giving young children juice because the sugar concentration is so high. We're also talking about, we had a guest on earlier, who has children who have diabetes, And in fact, yes, giving a child sugar in some cases is absolutely what is necessary to help control their blood sugar. There are people out there who have dietary aversions. They have intolerances, allergies that will very much limit what they can eat. And right now, the SNAP program, if people are allowed to buy food with their benefits, you have a very efficient way of getting food to people who need it. You don't have a separate supply chain. You don't have separate logistics. And when you start putting these restrictions in, all you do is muck things up, and the people who suffer are the people who don't have money for food. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, I agree about the farmers markets, but not everybody has a farmers market near them. That's why I said they should apply to vegetables anywhere, like supermarkets, small places, that sort of thing.
They do that with WIC. There is
they did.
They did. I don't know what's going on with it now, but they did have a thing with WIC where there was that an accommodation was made for fresh fruits and vegetables. And I've been aware, this was a while back, but there were some grocery stores that would actually bring in nutritionists. They would have cooking classes showing people how to prepare the foods. Everybody got a gift card that they could, spend in the store to take what they've learned. And it seems now that there's not even that emphasis anymore. I don't like it. Humiliation ritual.
Well, we go from food to housing. As Trump cancels plan to sign major housing bill as he fights with Congress over the SAVE Act. Yeah. Save his ass act is more like it. Probably not going to happen. Trump abruptly canceled his plans to sign a major bipartisan housing bill Wednesday, saying he will not do so until Congress passes the Save America Act, a sweeping elections bill that has become a focal point of his second term. Today's housing news, I'm not going to do his voice because he wrote this. Today's housing news conference and signing is hereby canceled until such time as we pass the desperately needed Save America Act, which I consider to be a national emergency, he posted on his True Social account. So basically holding it hostage until he gets this bullshit passed. It was not immediately clear whether he still plans to sign the housing bill or veto it. The White House did not immediately respond to a request for additional comment. Trump has repeatedly pressed Republicans to pass the Save America Act, which would overhaul elections in all 50 states. And basically guaranteed Republicans would win. And add new proof of citizenship and voter ID requirements. But Republican leadership insists they do not have the votes to pass it, given Democrats' strong opposition and an unwillingness among Republicans to get rid of the legislative filibuster. Trump's decision to cancel the signing ceremony for the housing bill that passed the House and Senate this week with huge bipartisan majorities will only add to the tension between the White House and Senate Republicans. So what is the Housing Act, or the 21st Century Road to the Housing Act? This was released earlier this year. So this explainer reflects the 21st Century Road to Housing Act released on March 2nd, 2026, and will be updated as the legislation advances in Congress. I don't know how long this is.
It's bipartisan. It's Tim Scott, Republican, South Carolina. Elizabeth Warren, have co-sponsored it. It was fought over. This morning, we were getting the news, and Trump had actually supported that. He wanted to see that none of this stuff happening. And the reports were this morning, okay, it's going to go to Trump. And then right before the show started today, we got word that he was now holding back.
Yeah. So the 21st Century Road to Housing Act includes 18 sections from both the House and Senate bills, and at least 26 sections that incorporate previously introduced bipartisan legislation, including many supported by BPC and BPC Action. New provisions would restrict large institutional investors from buying single-family homes, aka BlackRock, and temporarily prohibit the Federal Reserve from establishing a digital dollar. Language authorizing appropriations for many programs in the House bill's community bank title were removed. These changes are reflected in the section-by-section summary below. So the bill is aimed at reconciling the approaches taken in the House's 21st Century and Senate's Roads Bill while reflecting Trump administration priorities, particularly limits on institutional investor purchases of single-family homes. The administration released a statement of administration policy shortly after the 21st Century Road to Housing Act was unveiled, expressing support for the updated bill. So the table below details which sections of the Road to Housing Act and Housing for the 21st Century Act appear in the 21st Century Road. That's a lot of road and stuff. Let's see. So Title I, improving financial literacy, clarifies HUD's authority to evaluate the performance of housing counseling agencies and counselors. Building More in America lifts the rental assistance demonstration program cap and extends protections for tenants in RAD buildings. Allows HUD to prioritize projects based in or primarily serving communities designated as opportunity zones for any competitive grants relating to housing development or preservation. It creates a HUD pilot program to support state, local, and tribal whole home repair programs, which provide grants and forgivable loans to homeowners and landlords for home repairs and modifications. Community investment and prosperity raises the cap on bank public welfare investments, such as affordable housing and community development projects, up from 15 to 20%. And it basically goes on here, telling you all the good things that Trump wanted nothing to do with, or at least maybe the people whispering in his ear, particularly those who do gobble up single homes and sell them for various purposes. Yeah. So, but the House and Senate passed this. Yeah. So unless he does veto it, and by broad majorities too, so he would need 2/3 majority in both houses to override that veto, and I think that would probably happen.
Yeah, he's tantruming right now.
He's pushing it off.
Yeah.
So it's like he does with everything else. He pushes it off for later, but then eventually the bill comes due. You got to deal with it.
There's also something interesting about this, and that is it's going to make it easier for people to buy and manufacture manufactured homes. Mm-hmm. And I've been reporting on this again since back in the day with Civically Minded. Manufactured homes have come a long way. They're not just, they're not those little claptrap things right now. They are solid. They have 40, 50-year warranties on them. And they're not terribly mobile. And I've been reporting on what can happen to people who live in mobile home parks where they can't afford to pay for their lot, and they can end up with eviction and losing their entire home. But one of the interesting things about this bill that it provides is that mobile home manufacturers and people who purchase them will no longer have to get a frame, the frame that allows the home to be moved from pillar to post. And that will save, because people usually, when they have a manufactured home, they put it in, they install it, they don't want to move it. So that can save about $5,000 to $10,000 per manufactured home. So this can be an exciting opportunity for people who perhaps are looking to be able to buy a home or to afford a home, being able to get something in a well-managed mobile home community. And again, there are some very nice ones out there. This could be an opportunity for home ownership for people in many areas. And that's something I think is very positive.
And you're seeing an uptick in people not only just living out of their buying an RV and living mm-hmm. out of it, you're seeing a lot more of that, but the mini homes, mm-hmm. a lot more people are like saying,
tiny homes,
the tiny homes, I don't need that much space, but I can still live comfortably in these things. And my favorite is the 3D printed houses. Have you ever seen these big manufacturers with the big, like the videos, and it shows the arm?
Yeah, I've seen them. Yeah.
I mean, you're probably going to see a lot more of that in some places where people are like, look, I'd love to have like a foundation house, but I don't want to pay $1 million for something that's going to be tiny, when I could just have somebody come out with concrete mm-hmm. and do the 3D printing thing and make it almost practically perfect, you know. So that's future stuff right there. But I totally dig that.
You know, I lived in an RV for a while. I was when I was living out in the woods in Oregon. I bought a 30-year-old RV, fifth wheel, and it was a lot of fun. I'll try to find a photo.
I'm telling you, as much as I do like people, but I don't love them that much. I want to get in an RV. I don't want to go to Bigfoot country and live out there, and hopefully they'll take me. Maybe they'll think if I change all this to red, maybe they'll think I'm one of their own. So that's one can hope. Well, more bad news for Trumpy as we get to the man of war stings here. And if you haven't been keeping up with what's going on, there's a current ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran, and of course Israel's not a big fan of that. But of course, there was this talk about whether Trump really had the legal authority to do this in the first place. Well, the U.S. Senate advances measure curbing Trump's Iran war powers. So
finally,
this was a party line deal, but it did get done. The Senate advanced a war powers resolution on Tuesday that would end the war unless Trump obtains Congress's authorization, a rare rebuke of Trump after U.S. and Israeli forces began striking Iran back in February. The vote on a procedural measure to advance the resolution was 50-47, as four of Trump's fellow Republicans voted with every Democrat but one. You can probably guess who that was, in favor. 3 Republicans missed the vote. Oopsie sauce. Sorry, I had some oppression I had to go do. The result was a victory for lawmakers who have been arguing that Congress, not the president, should have the power to send troops to war because, it's kind of a constitutional thing, However, it was only a procedural vote, and the resolution faces steep hurdles before going into effect. Even if it eventually passes the 100-member Senate, the resolution must also pass the Republican-led House of Representatives and garner 2/3 majorities in both the House and Senate to survive an expected Trump veto, which I doubt that would. I doubt it would survive that, because the House voted. The House voted on this too, but they had a different. I think they had a different resolution, but it was still the same thing. So Democratic Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia, who co-sponsored the resolution, said a ceasefire offered Trump an ideal opportunity to make his case to Congress. As the president has said, Tehran has made a new proposal to end the U.S.-Israeli war that began on February 28th. That's the perfect time to have a discussion before we start up war again. The president is receiving peace and diplomatic proposals that he is throwing into the trash without sharing them with us, Kaine said during the debate. And so, of course, John Fetterman was the only Democrat to vote against the measure. He's the new, what's his name? Joe Manchin. Yeah. He had to take Joe Manchin's spot. Basically, that's pretty much it. But the story is that this may even be a moot point anyway, because I think Iran has decided that this war is over. Because if you look at it like this, if Trump takes the deal that they'd already settled on, which you're starting to see, Israel is starting to pull out of Lebanon, or at least stopping the fighting. They're not pulling out yet, but Iran knows they have the upper hand when it comes to these negotiations, because they say, okay, give us your worst. Well, they didn't give them their worst. They didn't nuke them, but the United States did give them a hell of a pounding with missiles and stuff. And they still said, that's all you got, bro. And the United States is not used to that. They're used to cutting the heads off, of these figures in these countries and just going in, setting up their own people or putting in their own puppet and that kind of, and it didn't happen in Iran this time. And they're like, we don't know what to do. So war may not even be an option for Trump anymore, especially with these oil prices going through the roof whenever they do go to war with each other.
Well, I agree with your analysis. I'd say it's about time. And, we're looking incredibly stupid at this point. We seems to be going on this decline of intelligence quotient here in this country. So
We'll just say we're from Guam, Lainey. You're in Guam. I'm in another country, not the United States, right? Yeah. Okay. We have nothing to do with the United States. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I think the hubris with Trump and particularly Israel too, that they thought, okay, we could just take out Iran fairly easily. The intelligence that they should have listened to said not so much. And now now Iran is turning out to be in a better position than when before Trump attacked. Right now they'll be able to collect fees of people coming through the Strait of Hormuz. They're going to get sanctions unfrozen, and they're going to get reparations. Allegedly, at least that's what the agreement said. So it's like, maybe don't go to war with people until you actually know who you're fighting in that war, and get Congress to give you permission before you do. Good
idea. Yeah,
always a good idea.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of Congress, but at least in this case, at least it's in the Constitution. Maybe do your job.
It's in the Constitution. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, you would think. Yeah. Put on your waders. We're going in the press pool as the FCC takes aim at Disney's push for public support amid regulatory probes. And there's a regulatory probe right there. It's Brendan Carr, so it must be a convertible because he's got the top down. You see that? What I'm doing there with the thing. The FCC on Monday blasted Disney's push for public support amid the agency's probes of The View and ABC's broadcast licenses. Latest development in Disney's growing standoff with regulators. Regulators, mount up. The FCC under Trump appointed chair Brendan Carr said in February that it was looking into whether The View violated equal time rules as after an appearance by James Tallarico, the Democratic candidate in November's U.S. Senate race in Texas. I thought they got rid of equal time rules like a long time ago. That's why you have Fox News and you have MSNBC. I thought that's what happened, but maybe I'm wrong. The View, which first aired in 1997, is co-hosted by a panel of women who interview politicians and celebrities, in case you don't know what The View is. Seeking to rally support from viewers, ABC launched a campaign Monday urging people to push back against what it says are threats to free speech. Its on-air spots call on the public to petition the FCC to let the viewers decide what they want on their airwaves.
Imagine that in a country with the First Amendment.
Yeah, you would think. The View has welcomed your favorite guests and covered the issues you've cared about for nearly 30 years. The voiceover says in one of the ads, now the FCC wants to control who is allowed to appear on the show. Viewers use your voice. Scan this QR code. You'll have until July 6th. Addressing ABC's new campaign, an FCC spokesperson said in a statement Monday, Disney wants the FCC to classify The View as a bona fide news program, and it has chosen to run a campaign of misinformation to make its case, misleading viewers about the law. That is a choice. A spokesperson for The View did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Under FCC regulations, bona fide news programs are exempt from equal time rules that generally require broadcasters to provide equal opportunities to competing political candidates. Carr wrote Monday on the tweeters that classifying the show as a bona fide news program would exempt The View from the political equal time requirements that Congress passed decades ago, but they still don't go by. What do you think? Is The View bona fide? Is The View bona fide news? Carr continued. ABC argued in a filing to the FCC in May that The View airs under an exemption to the equal time rule granted to it more than 20 years ago. ABC's filing was registered on behalf of KTRK-TV, the network's own station in Houston, with ABC's lawyers saying the station was ordered to file a formal request asking whether The View qualified for the exemption. The network said it has never been disputed that The View is a so-called bona fide news show. Some may dislike certain or even most of the viewpoints expressed on The View or similar shows, ABC said in the 52-page document. Such dislike, however, cannot justify using regulatory processes to restrict those views. The FCC issued an order in April directing Disney's 8 owned and operated television stations to file their broadcast license renewals ahead of schedule, following a clash between the White House and ABC over a joke. Late night host Jimmy Kimmel made about First Lady Melania Trump. Carr has previously insisted the ABC license review stems from the FCC's probe of Disney's diversity, equity, and inclusion practices, not speech. Trump has frequently complained about ABC in recent years and in 2024 sued the network for defamation. The network settled the suit later that year after Trump won a second term. Trump on Monday threatened to sue the network again over its coverage of problems with the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool following renovations gone horribly awry. So we're preparing lawsuits against ABC for false reporting. Whatever. Okay, so The View, in the name itself, means it's not a bona fide news program, because The View means you're giving your opinion on something. Now, you may have news articles. It's kind of like what we do. We provide you news information, and at the end of the giving you that information, we both comment on the information, right? And that's a view. We're giving our views. That being said, though, you can't have the FCC telling you what to say.
Well, I think what they're saying is that, I mean, that bona fide news or news programs are not required to give equal time. And in this case, they've decided that The View is not a bona fide news program for whatever reason. The thing is that there is editorialization that goes on some news programs, and nobody's questioning that they're going to have there are evening news programs or morning news programs where somebody does give their opinion, or they have a panel discussion. There are opinions given, so it's not straight news reading. They're actually inserting their opinions there. And what's happening here is the FCC has pointed at The View and said, well, this is not a bona fide news program. So I have my own opinions on why that might be. But I think that in my view, there needs to, in a country with a First Amendment, freedom of the press, where the press should be free to criticize, there should be a broad definition of what is news and how we interpret things. You may choose to not, you don't like The View, you don't see it as being particularly useful, but it is a news program. They are bringing news stories to the public. They're also discussing them. They're having a conversation, but they are doing that. And what's happening is the FCC is saying, no, it's not a bona fide news program. And I'm saying, I don't think that the FCC is in the business of picking and choosing between news programs to decide what is bona fide and what is not.
Well, as someone who was an actual journalist back in the day, seeing what's going on today, this is the fault of CNN. Back in the 80s, because when CNN came on board, headline news, I guess to a certain extent too, when you had this 24-hour news cycle, you had to fill the 24-hour news cycle. And there was only so much news at the time that you could put on there without having to repeat it over and over again. So whenever we went to Iraq the first time, right, the Gulf War, the Iraq, before, his son did the second one, that's where you started seeing frequently more experts coming on. You've heard about the generals that were on there that were talking about giving their opinions about stuff. They weren't relaying, sometimes they were relaying factual information, but that doesn't mean it was news. It means the most of it was their opinions on what was happening, because they weren't there on the ground. They didn't know what was happening then. So then all of a sudden opinions started flourishing within regular, like your ABC, NBC, CBS, which you never had before. Yes, you had anchors back in the day who would give an opinion on something, but it had to be something powerful, like JFK getting assassinated. All right. Walter Cronkite's not going to be a robot and just report the news. This is something tragic that happened. 9/11 is another one too. It's just something so bigger than anything else that of course you're going to express your opinion in there. But that didn't used to be a thing back in the day. And now it just seems like you can't even tell what the news is from the opinions. We can, because we consume a lot of news and we're intelligent people. But some people are just like, hey, he probably got a point, and that guy's probably just giving him a line of shit because it's an opinion, and you know what I mean? You know the thing.
Right. And this is, we've been reporting on this. The FCC under Brennan Carr has been effectively, they don't like the news coverage, or they don't like the coverage that's going on. He is threatening broadcast licenses.
Yes.
He is coming in and saying we can hasten the renewal period, and we're going to force you to do this. And he has said we're going to do this the easy way or the hard way. He has used threatening language and to do this because he doesn't like the content, or he doesn't like what he calls DEI at these stations. And again, for me, it is, first of all, you shouldn't be threatening the license of a station. If a station has done something, a broadcast station has done something illegal or has violated the regulations, certainly there can be a hearing to suspend that license. But the idea of accelerating the renewal period from what had originally been in place just to give somebody a station a spanking, I think is a very dangerous precedent. Disney has the money to fight this. A small broadcast station somewhere else may not. And again, regardless, I'm not a fan of The View. I've never particularly, it doesn't appeal to me. And I absolutely agree that journalists need to be careful in how they present the news, and that they can separate fact and opinion and make their product very clear in that regard. But I also think that the FCC really needs to step back from judging content, because freedom of the press here is incredibly important.
Well, yeah, and they're not doing it on moral grounds. These are all political motivations. Yeah. He's just the attack dog of Trump, and Trump doesn't like.
And he shouldn't.
He doesn't like, yeah, and it shouldn't. But here he is.
The heads of our regulatory agencies should not be doing this, and they should not be weaponized like this. And this, I think, is a failure in our systems. That does not provide for complete independence of these regulatory agencies, and that their appointments should not be political, or should be as unpolitical as we can possibly muster. I'm very concerned.
Yeah, well, you should be. I mean, like I said, these are political motivations that we haven't seen before. Not to say that presidents have never used their cabinet members to something to help them, but they were a little more covert about it. And Trump is just one thing you can say out there, he's very transparent in how shitty a president he is. So
there we go.
Hey, Mariana, good to see you. Okay, cool. So we got this too. Trump's DOJ's use of subpoenas against journalists is straight out of the dictator's playbook, according to Press Freedom Group. So yeah, so not just The View. It seems like all journalists that are reporting the truth have a bullseye painted on them. The U.S. Department of Justice attempt to compel journalists to testify before a grand jury is drawing blowback from a top press freedom group, which is accusing Trump's administration of behaving like an authoritarian regime. Like an authoritarian regime. Yeah, they more like is. According to a Tuesday report in the Times, New York Times, the DOJ earlier this month issued subpoenas for national security reporters at the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal related to national security leaks. National security, take a drink. That's the drinking game. Subpoenas against both news organizations were withdrawn after they issued legal challenges and sealed filings. The Justice Department had sought information from 3 reporters at the Journal about an article detailing how top officials warned Trump of the risks of a major military campaign against Iran, reported the Times. It also sought information from a reporter at the Post, Ellen Nakashima, about reporting related to the U.S. military action in Venezuela. As the Times noted, it is highly uncommon for government investigators to subpoena journalists when they are probing national security leaks, as such actions are generally seen as having a chilling effect on reporters' ability to gather information. You think? I think that's by design. After the details of the subpoenas and news of their withdrawal broke, Reporters Without Borders slammed the Trump DOJ for hitting a new low in its attempt to suppress information from the American people. Subpoenaing journalists to appear before a grand jury under the guise of national security is straight out of the dictator's playbook, the group said. Fortunately, in the U.S., newsrooms are fighting back and winning. A Tuesday CNN report claimed that Trump had personally pushed acting Attorney General Todd Blanche to subpoena the journalists, going so far as to hand Blanche a sticky note with the word treason written in Sharpie placed atop a stack of printed articles. Wow. CNN also reported that both the Post and the Journal remain on guard against the possibility that the subpoenas will be reissued in the future. A spokesperson for the Post ripped the Trump DOJ for issuing an unwarranted subpoena of our reporter, which the newspaper described as a clear violation of constitutionally guaranteed press freedom. We will continue to stand fully behind the journalism of the Washington Post, the spokesperson added, and fight all efforts by any administration that violate our First Amendment rights. Gabe Rotman, vice president of policy at Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press, said in an interview with the Post that issuing grand jury subpoenas to reporters put core First Amendment rights at risk because, quote, once you are up in front of the grand jury, the testimony can go in many different ways and can inquire into stories that are unrelated to the underlying investigation. The potential of the government intruding into the news gathering process is even greater when you are in the grand jury than it is for a subpoena for documents, Rotman added. So, again, trying to chill these journalists, very controlling of a government. And again, this is not something that he's been hiding. He's been going after these journalists for a while, even before he was president, too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And we began seeing that a long time ago. I remember before it was right around the time of the 2016 election, I want to say, there was a journalist who was body slammed by a candidate in Montana in public. And I think the guy who did it and went on to win. And it's a real concern because there are many countries around the world where being a journalist puts a target on your back. And we certainly don't want that here, but it's looking like that may be emerging.
Well, it's going to be wash, rinse, repeat. They're going to violate the First Amendment. They're going to be taken to court. The court's going to shut them down because these courts now, I think Trump was really depending on these courts since he got a lot of federal judges in place, thought that they were going to play ball with him. And some of them have, but a lot of them haven't. And I think that's another thing that blew up in his face. But if you're going to be a dictator, you have to control the press. And if you can't control the press, then you're not going to have control. And right now we're seeing the press in the battle for its lives as far as its relevance and, their sincerity in providing actual news. That's why I always tell people, yes, it's good to listen to journalists, but follow the money. If they're independent journalists, see who's funding them. And if they're just, nickel and diming it, just getting donations from people, chances are they're going to fight harder to give you the truth as these other places do. But, that's something we have to do is keep telling people that, look, the press is under attack. Well, actually, I should say journalism itself is under attack, and we have to keep fighting.
Indeed. Well, in this case, the FCC is going right after the mouse. So and I'm not a huge fan of Disney by any stretch of the imagination, but all eyes on this case because the fallout can be significant.
Yeah, there could be precedent too. It's like if for some reason Trump actually wins against them, then anybody, because basically people are just going to say, well, if Disney can't fight them, what chance do I have? And they won't even, it would be very devastating. So in this one case, go Disney. Yeah. But just this one case only. Finally today, let's end with some fun news. Can you ride a skateboard, or do you have the ability to ride a skateboard?
I do not.
I have no balance.
Yeah, neither do I.
Even if I wore New Balance shoes, I still would have.
I was just about to say something like that. Yeah.
The new and New Balance would somebody Letterman would come along and rip the O from his Letterman sweater and turn New Balance into No Balance. In other words, I can't skate. I can't ice skate. I can't roller skate. Can't do the skateboarding. I can't water ski. I can ski on snow skis, but I don't know how to turn and I don't know how to stop without falling on my butt. All right. I couldn't imagine what this guy was thinking. So this guy, skateboarder, crosses the U.S. coast to coast on a skateboard in 39 days. That's pretty fast.
It is.
There's we'll play a little bit of this if Lord willing and the creek don't rise. We don't have to have that. But yeah, here he is. He started off in California and he ended up in Florida. So he took the southern route. There's a gentleman right there and some of his pals. All right. So he doesn't document the whole trip. That would take forever. So a skateboarder traveled from California to Florida in just 39 days in an attempt to break his own Guinness World Record. Oh, look at him. Wasn't satisfied. So Chad Caruso made the journey of more than 3,000 miles from Venice Beach, California to Jacksonville, Florida between May 1st and June 8th, averaging 72 miles a day. Hopefully it was all downhill from California to Florida. That would be awesome. Skateboarding back would be the more difficult. So Caruso, I'm kidding. It's not all downhill. Caruso, who has chronicled his journey on YouTube and previously skated from Venice Beach to Virginia Beach, Virginia in 57 days, 6 hours and 36 minutes back in 2023. That trip earned him the Guinness World Record title for the fastest crossing of America on a skateboard. He said his latest trip was about both breaking his own record and celebrating 10 years of sobriety. Skateboarding was the thing that kept me out of trouble. I did it my whole life. I was obsessed with it, got injured, and I ended up quitting. Caruso told Action News Jacksonville. Brought it back and everything turned out better. His trip raised money for Natural High, an organization that encourages kids to be active and stay away from drugs and alcohol. They said, I couldn't do that. I couldn't skate from the front door to the corner without just wiping out and me saying, screw it, I'm done. No more broken bones. That would be terrible. But he did it for charity. So it wasn't like he was just trying to, do it. And he was trying to break his own record, but also, if he can help some people
I think it's great. I think it's great. Yeah. It is great to see some people do that kind of thing.
That's what they call feel good news, folks. That's why we put it at the end of the show. So it's the awful news we told you before to totally put you in the bottle. We can at the end at least give you a little upswing.
Be a little
at
happy.
The end. Yeah. So again, I could never do that. But maybe get on one of those Walmart hover rounds. I could probably do that. You know what I mean? I think Target has them too now. And like all these stores have these big hover rounds that you can You ever get on one of those? Like when you're in one of those big stores?
No, I've never seen them.
Well, you've never seen them?
No, I don't know. No.
A lot of Southern stores have them though.
Oh, okay.
Because we some big people down there. We like to eat. We like to eat. But yeah, a little hover around. You ever seen the commercials for hover around? These people? Okay. We got to get you a hover around just for fun.
Okay.
Me too. I want one. So I guess that's it for today. We'll be back again next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. I'll be back for Morning Extra Friday morning. And
always a great show.
We try to be. Give you some news that a lot of people may not be reporting. And then with secret show on Saturday night for funsies and good times and sillies. Maybe you'll learn a little something here and there. We like to do some of the sciencey stuff on there too. So it's kind of fun. Anything you got going on with anything you want to end out of here with?
I'm looking forward to Morning Extra. I'm also looking forward to the secret show because that's always a great way to spend an evening.
It is until you have to do it yourself, and then you're like, oh, the pains. There's so much because you got to look up all this stuff. You
Oh,
gotta,
I know you do. You put a lot of work into them.
it's a lot of work, but the payoff is purely 100% gold. Other than that, I guess we're going to get out of here. Again, thanks. Please, if you can, like, share, and subscribe. We're only 2 subscribers away from 100, I believe.
Yep.
So if you're watching this live or in the future and you haven't subscribed, please do so. And we'll have all these stories in full on our Substack for you. And all the links are down below. You can see them right
And I
there.
just put our link tree also into the comments.
Right on, right on. We will see you guys when we see you. Peace out.
All right, take care.